Welcome to the Two Michaels podcast with me, Michael Simkin, and Michael Bloom. Today, we're lucky enough to be with Elias McQuade, master therapist. Elias, great to be with you.
Yeah, nice to see you guys. Thanks for inviting me, you guys. Thanks.
With pleasure. I mean, let's dive straight in and tell us a little about your background.
My background, well, I originally was born in England. And to make my kind of biography a little bit juicy and relevant to this talk, I had a pretty traumatic start to life. I was supposed to be adopted. So I went 9 months in my mother's womb to be adopted, and then she went to a hospital and then where I was going to be adopted, and she wasn't able to do it, so she took me back home. My birth was delayed. My mum disappeared into hospital for 2 months. I have an abuse history from 5 to 7, and I had suffered from migraine from when I was about 10 or 11 until I was 15. And what happened, what resolved the migraine, funnily enough, I found a little advertisement in the local newspaper about a meditation talk. It ended up being transcendental meditation.
Cool. So what about more like academic qualifications? And perhaps we could jump ahead and see. Did you go to university? You studied things?
Well,
did you work?
That came later when I moved from England to Norway. I met a Norwegian woman in England. We got together, we had a child, and we moved to Norway, and I went to university there. I took a psychology degree in the Oslo University.
Nice. So, Yeah, cool. I understand you have something you've developed, perhaps something called Destination Home, a journey into wholeness. Can you please explain what is that exactly?
That would be how much time do we have?
Don't worry, I'll stop you.
Okay. Destination home, that's like a metaphor for coming back to our true self, our real self, after we've been drawn way outside of ourselves into life and into our story. And it's like how to turn our attention back towards ourself, which is also looking for wholeness and all the stuff we're trying to searching for, our searching self, happiness, relationships, money, whatever, can actually be seen as a way to come back to ourself, into wholeness. It doesn't look like that at some point, but I kind of figure that's the true reason why we do all this searching and seeking and in all the multitude of ways we do that.
Okay.
So I kind of called it how I work basically for myself. I don't kind of advertise it or say about that. We're searching for wholeness, and what a better place to find that than within ourselves.
What does wholeness mean for you?
Wholeness means we are not split or separated or alienated. It's like a feeling that all our faculties, qualities, capacities are in place and available. Our resources, they're available, like instinctively and intuitively available. We don't have to go outside of ourselves to find them. So that's kind of the state of wholeness I'm kind of implying.
Do you think everyone has to get back to wholeness?
Not doesn't appear that way when we're first born. But I think I don't know everybody, but I think the majority of mankind is alienated and split off and separated from themselves.
Why do you reckon that happens?
Well, if you look at a young child, they seem really, they seem whole. They are alive, they are spontaneous, they are sensitive, they are vulnerable, they have awareness, they can express themselves, even though they don't have a clue who they are, or no language or anything else. They are in that wholeness, like when we're born. We're kind of born with it, I would say.
So how does the split happen, and when?
Yeah, it's like the layers of I mean, coming into life, like a ready-made organism with all the parental and societal and cultural and religious and political ideologies and rules and regulations and stuff like that that we get that imposed upon us. So it's almost like like a conditioning, like a giant jacket that's put on something so pristine and pure and open. So we've got this big, heavy jacket of I mean, if anybody's been at a birth, I have 2 children, I was at the birth. And it's like being in an electrical storm. It's like so much energy and so much aliveness and so much openness and sensitivity that we start off our lives with. But somehow we all seem to end up like we're wearing a giant dark brown overcoat that we're going around on.
Would you say the loss of wholeness is something to do with like the child understanding, my parents don't like it when I do this, that, and the other. I better be the child they want, or they might throw me away. And as a strategy, the child represses his true self. And that's the jacket, the mask that we put on to pretend to be what will keep us safe. It's like a survival strategy.
Yeah, no, I don't think the child thinks it. I think it's more felt. It's like the felt.
It just does, not think. It happens.
Yeah, it happens. Yeah, it's part of the human condition. We have to go through it, right? Yeah. Otherwise, we don't live or survive if we don't have parents and all that stuff.
If you have parents who are very sort of accommodating and sensitive and accepting and nurturing and healthy, I wonder, will the child still go through it? Will there still be a loss of self, a loss of authenticity in this sort of adaptation?
Yeah, first of all, I wouldn't say that we lose our authenticity and our true self. It's more like it's veiled. It's covered up by this jacket and hat and Wellingtons and stuff like that. So it's still it's hidden from view, so to speak. So
okay, interesting. What about you keep talking about the spectrum of light analogy? Is that of any relevance to this discussion?
Yeah, well, I like to think in kind of images and symbols and stuff like that. So I was looking at I was actually listening to a Pink Floyd, the Dark Side of the Moon, and they have the prism with the shaft of white light, and it gets fractaled into the color spectrum, right? And I just kind of I saw that, and I just got saw this thing. Well, if we're coming from, who knows where we come from before we enter the womb and eventually birth. So it's like, and it's like the ancient wisdom teachings and all that stuff. They say we come from being and true nature and the universe and the cosmos and stuff like that. So that shaft of light. So if that's representative for our true nature, is that shaft of white light, then it hits the prism and gets fractaled into all these colors. It's a bit similar. We think about entering the womb and the birth, that integrated whole that we started as gets split into all these fragments of what's right and what's wrong and what's good and bad and white and black and male and female and all this stuff. That process of differentiation happens, and so I just thought of that symbol. That was a good symbol for that process. That it's kind of unavoidable. It just happens to all of us to a certain degree.
maybe we could go into how are we detached from our true nature. Perhaps you could give examples of the actual detachment itself. I think you just said something, male, female. Well, actually, I don't know if that's the detachment. So, yeah.
How do we get attached from our true nature? Well, all the demands and expectations and rules and the stuff that are demanded of us bring out. We have to kind of figure that out. You guys know as much as I do, and everybody else, that as we're growing up, we're spontaneous and open and free and stuff, but we get imposed upon us. No, you can't do that. That's not good. You mustn't do that for mummy, and you mustn't laugh at grandmother's nose and all that stuff. So the repetition and the constant repetition of you is like the message must be. I don't remember myself being so young, but it must be like I've got to be if I act in a certain way, think in a certain way, express myself in a certain way, I would be appreciated and loved, and will avoid getting shouted at and getting rejected and have to go to my room and stuff like that. And that just goes on and on and on from a very early age, even as we're adults, through teenagers and adults. It just keeps on getting imposed upon us. So, that's why the ancient wisdom teachings and therapy, that the whole idea of that is to turn our attention back towards ourself, so we can start seeing through all those layers of that conditioning and imposing of ways to be and act and stuff like that.
And how can we do that? How can we reunite with our true nature?
Well, the idea is basically to split off from our natural self that we're born with is painful. It's a painful experience. Somehow it's painful. I can't remember if it's painful, but in my practice and in my own journey, I experienced that I have to go through a lot of pain. So the way back is through the pain, through the all the psychodynamic experiences of fears and deficiencies and distortions that we've been imposed upon us. That's painful. That's painful that I can't say what I want, feel what I want, express how I want, whatever that is, even as a small child, for sure, and even in our adult life. We have to conform immensely to perpetuate our relationships and keep our job and our friends and stuff.
It seems that it's so painful that we have to repress it. That's part of the problem, and the rest of the emotions that we repress are on top of the pain, the fear, and then the anger, and shame as well.
Right.
That's sort of almost like that loss, the loss of true nature in childhood is it's so life-threatening.
Yeah, there's also that thing about that to be disconnected from it it's a kind of a betrayal, which is it's painful. There's a lot of sorrow in it. It's like a self-betrayal in a way, and I think we feel we feel this at a deep level, that it's painful to not be able to truly be who I am, who I know who I am to be. So we need to go through that, in and through that pain.
It's almost like the Garden of Eden story, but on an individual level. The loss of Eden, sort of the loss of being whole and authentic and becoming split.
I think there's a vast amount of analogies and symbols in the religious and wisdom literature, right? It's enormous. So for sure, all these ancient guys have picked up on stuff.
Yeah.
How do you reconnect with your pain? Like if I'm repressing my pain, how can I reconnect to it?
Yeah, we have to feel it. It's like to go to it's in a way, it's like a learning experience to connect up with our felt sense, the sensation. We can say, "Oh, I'm angry," and it's a bit removed from how does it really feel, that anger? How does that sadness
to scream.
feel? How does it? The sensation. To go to the sensation, feel the sensation, stay with the sensation, move towards it, embrace it, and keep on and on doing that. And then slowly we are able to integrate it, absorb it back into ourself, into our awareness, through our awareness.
So if I have an argument with Michael Simkin, for example, let's say he says something which triggers anger within me. So do I understand correctly that I should just sit there angry, not mention it to him, not share it with anyone, just feel the anger and just sit there feeling the anger and being angry and noticing how the anger multiplies and grows and just explodes within me, and just sit there with it?
I don't know if it's a good answer, but it depends, because if you are usually we either do one or two things. We suppress it, right? Like you're saying.
How would that be? I would just say, no, I don't feel anger. Let me go and just la 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 la. It's all good. It's all good. This is ignoring it? Because I don't know what you mean.
Well, the recognition of it. This makes me feel angry, or this makes me feel sad, or I feel confused, or I feel...
we can acknowledge it to ourselves and then to others.
Yeah, also acknowledge it to others, depending on the relationship with the person. I mean, I wouldn't go into in a supermarket to the person in front of me in the queue and say, you know what, I feel really sad today because my girlfriend left me, or that wouldn't be appropriate, right?
But if the guy in the queue, I don't know, says something to the other person, I'm just inventing something, and he triggers me, okay? And we start shouting at each other, and then perhaps I could just say, actually, I'm going to share with him. I'll say, you know what, mate? To be honest, I was triggered by what you said to that woman over there, and that made me really angry. And I just want you to understand why I shouted. So is that not appropriate?
Well, what do you think yourself?
I think it's very appropriate. I actually do it myself.
With perfect
strangers.
This perfect stranger. What happens when you do that?
I feel relief immediately. I find that I cannot deal with the anger. If I am angry, I have to confront the person and just share it with them. And I've been practicing it for a while now. And that's the only thing I find that instantly solves the pain. And if I don't do it, then I will keep feeling angry and more angry, and it could linger on for days.
Well, you could do both. Doing it in the moment, in a situation, okay, you get a release, right?
Yeah.
But to go deeper, to find out what is actually behind the anger. Yeah. I mean, that's best done in a different setting.
Yeah.
That's more like an inquiry setting, inquiring thing. What's actually going on? What's in this feeling? What's behind it?
Yeah.
You use the word trigger. I mean, I think it's possible to look at the word trigger and see a little more what's there. I mean, trigger to me implies that there's some old emotional wound, that when something similar happens, we respond from that old place, not from a place of being neutral.
I found it with my psychologist. I wouldn't be able to find it myself. I mean, thank God my therapist found it, told me, explained it to me, and now I know. I can't imagine me ever finding it myself.
Finding what?
The cause of the trigger. I mean, in my case, it's a low self-esteem, low self-value, which I kind of think that the other person is exposing what I'm trying to kind of hide, and that creates a feeling of anger and blah blah blah.
Well, if the true meaning of therapy is to find our true nature again. A lot of therapies, they kind of give what's it called, temporary ways of getting out of thinking or in certain situations, but the real endeavor of therapy is to get back or to our true nature. The way to do that is to go through the pain, through the confusion, through the sorrow, through the feeling of separation and alienation and all that stuff. That's the true meaning. So somewhere along the line, we're going to really have to confront these feelings.
I don't know what it means. Simkin, do you understand?
I'm hearing it, unfortunately, well, maybe not unfortunately, but through a kind of Advaita perspective, that where true nature means pure being without identification, just being in the zone, being in the present, as opposed to the not true nature, which is the ego construct and all the bullshido thinking that passes through my mind, that is usually based on worrying about this and not feeling good enough about that, and various neurotic patterns, and that which stand in the way of the true nature. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I think of it like, true nature and Advaita and all these great spiritual teachings and methods, great concepts and preconceptions and presuppositions. I think the best way to see what the true nature is like think of a little newborn child that's totally open, sensitive, vulnerable, non-judgmental, just totally open. I think that's the best, the best example of true nature, apart from all this other spiritual, philosophical, conceptual stuff.
There's one thing thinking about true nature. There's the other thing, which is being in true nature. Like,
yep.
If I'm with my breath, I can feel the floor underneath my feet. I can feel the chair under my ass. That's true nature, no? Maybe.
Could be.
So, Elias, you mentioned the two guardians at the threshold preventing us from connecting to our true nature. Who are these two guardians at the threshold?
Well, again, like I said, I like to think in symbols and archetypes and stuff like that. And the guardians at the threshold are kind of symbols of the obstacles that stop us from getting in contact with who we really are behind all the conditioning and emotionality and thinking. One of them, I think I come across three. One of the guardians, think of them as an obstacle that we need to go through to get in contact with our true nature.
Yeah, but who are they?
Well,
give them a chance.
One is the what do you call it? The unbearable sorrow of separation. That's the first one. We've been separate. We're separate from our true nature, and in the first moments of being born, we're separated from our mum, and then it just goes on and on and on. So we become like an individual, which is the ultimate separation. I'm an individual, an individual ego or a person or an I. That's the epitome of separation. I'm now an I. I'm boom. I'm trying to connect up. So one of the guardians of the obstacles is to feel that pain, the sorrow of that we're separated out. Mm-hmm. It doesn't appear that way because we all have a circle of friends and girlfriend or wife or married or whatever. But inside, the feeling that we're separated from who we really are. So that's so the first guardian is the sorrow, the unbearable sorrow of separation that we need to go through to feel that. Another one is the terror of the abyss, like when we eventually when we go into the process of trying to get in contact with who we really are, beyond all this, taking off the big black heavy coat, we're gonna hit some kind of identity crisis, because we believe, I am all this stuff that I've been learned and been imposed on me to be. That's me. If I start letting go of that, who the hell am I then?
It's like ego death.
Yeah, to hit that is like the terror of falling into an abyss.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the psychodynamic literature explains this really well. You know, about and people who are schizophrenic and psychotic and borderline, all this stuff. They have a so-called very weak and flimsy ego. So they're on the edge. They're on that precipice, the edge of that abyss. You know, and it's called to have a weak ego. But in deep processes, that's a good place to be if you know how to let go of your identity, you know, and just but the fear that we're going to fall into an abyss of having no clue of who we are, what we are. That's another one. I think another one is the guardian is the guardian of betrayal. To really meet this feeling of all this kind of way of being and operating in life and getting all this stuff, you know, like society and culture and religion wants me to be and live, is a kind of a betrayal of our true self. Mm-hmm. So we need to go through that as well. We need to meet and process that.
I like what Simkin said about the death of the ego, which again seems similar to what you said. The abyss is the death.
Yes.
And the fear of it. The ego doesn't want to fall into the abyss or die. And it explains also the third point you just made, I believe. Okay, great. Yeah. I believe we spoke about the origin of suffering. If we didn't, then perhaps you could just complete that. And then I'd like to ask you, why does it remain with us regardless of all the spiritual practices that we do?
I think the origin of suffering is being born. It's like an inevitable experience, because you know, we're coming from vastness and infinite space and have all these you know, and we're very vulnerable and sensitive and open and we don't know a damn thing. So we're going to meet diversity from almost day one, even from being born. And I think, and suffering just seems to be laid on more and more layers. I think it's inevitable being a human being.
What do you think the difference?
Pain and suffering.
I was about to ask you, what do you think the difference between pain and suffering is?
I think pain can be physical. You know, you can bang your head on something, that's pain. And I think suffering is more like psychological.
Like emotional pain.
Psychological, emotional.
Resistance. I heard it's resisting the pain. That causes suffering.
Yeah. And a defense to or resistance to the pain, to the emotional or psychological pain. Yeah. You guys know a lot, huh? I should be asking you questions.
We try.
Should be asking you questions.
Simkin, you were going to ask something.
I was just thinking about this Buddhist idea, life is suffering, and I guess it means in a state of separation, our pain becomes suffering.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, he was a
samsara.
Smart guy, the Buddha.
Well, he knew a couple of things, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. That's why he's still so popular.
And he was willing to feel his pain.
Ahead of his time by thousands of years.
Yeah.
And you know how they talk about the mind, the brain, the spirit, the soul? I mean, what is the human mind, for example?
What is the human mind?
What a question.
I don't think it's an object. It seems like it's an object, right? As an objective reality. I think it's just a dictionary definition of something that's that thoughts and pass through. Thoughts and then emotions arise in our awareness. I think it's just a definition for, okay, we have awareness and we're aware of what we're thinking and feeling and sensing, and and our emotions. And we have to kind of place it somewhere, like a human mind has to have some object to place things into, localize. So I think it's just a word it's functional.
That's okay. I'm sure it's somehow connected to the ego, I'm guessing. So how is the ego formed, and how does that become a defense against the resistance towards going out of our ego's sense of identity?
Well, so when I was born, and I was going, Elias, you're so sweet, and Elias, you're so cute, and Elias, are you hungry, and Elias, you can. So after a while, I think, Elias, that must be me, and so on. And that is a kind of how the ego structure is how it's constructed. With all these things that must be me, and then it just goes on. I think that's the origin of it. It just, I'm referred to as a person, an identity. I start to think that, that's me. Oh yeah, and and this is my mum, and these things are mine, and that's not mine, and and the way I get feedback and mirroring and stuff like that. So all that forms a sense of I.
Do you think there's
ego
just one
identity? It's called ego identity in the literature.
Do you think there's just one ego, or are there more than one?
I mean, it seems like it's multifaceted. It's like a theater troupe. That different with different roles with different people in different situations. So it's kind of it's not like one single thing. It's just a multitude of ways of functioning.
Gurdjieff called it the eyes.
Really?
Yeah, there's the eye that believes this. There's another eye, and like if you go to sleep and say, "I'm going to quit smoking tomorrow morning," and then you get up in the morning and straight away smoke a cigarette, because this I in the morning is not the I that was last night promising never to smoke again. And apparently we have loads of I's, and you have to identify them and then find the steward and then concentrate on him. And
so we're basically schizophrenic. That's
that's easy to believe.
In a sense. Well,
that's actually the psychoanalytic literature says. We are all these pathologies are actually a normal ego has them. We're narcissistic, and we're schizoid, and we're all these kind of stuff. It's usually labels put on people that are having deep psychiatric problems, but actually the ego in its nature has all these splits. I'm a different I to my dad and I am to my daughter.
Of course,
in the shop. It's kind of functional, right?
In the transactional analysis model, there are 5 ego states: 2 parents, an adult, and 2 children.
Yeah, right.
You got natural child and adapted child, and then authoritative parent and nurturing.
Sorry, what's transactional analysis, Simkin?
Eric Byrne came up with it in the 1970s as a sort of a step beyond.
So presuming our viewers, let's say 3 of our viewers never heard of it, maybe we could just explain it quickly, because I think it's really interesting, the transactional analysis thing.
Well, 5 ego states, and if I talk to you from parents saying, Michael, you really ought to be careful the way you write questions for interviews. You need to, if you're gonna, as I've set myself up as parent, you can if you answer as child, you can either say, "I've done my fucking best to write the questions," or "Oh yes, you're quite right. I'll be more careful next time." Or as an adult, you could say, "Well, is this an appropriate question?" Or if you answer as parent, you could say, "Don't you dare tell me how to write questions. I'm an experienced interviewer." So kind of at times we choose which state we're responding from. And somehow for me, it corresponds a little bit to this, what's called IFS, internal family systems, of this guy, Dave Schwartz, where he talks about the parts and allows parts to speak to each other. Because they're saying there isn't just one ego. There's all this fragmentation, and they use different terminology, not parent, adult, and child, they use words like protector, and I can't remember.
There's basically lots corresponds. Of voice dialogue and psychodrama, and that they kind of allude to. There's personality is multi. It's a multi-personality we have.
Do you think that's part of becoming whole again, is acknowledging all these parts and giving them voice?
I think it's a process that kind of makes us aware that we have multi-personalities. We all have a multi-personality disorders. I think it's good to be aware of that, but somewhere along the line, if you're going to really feel whole or feel integrated, then you have to go past that.
Past it, yeah. But is the path to going past it accepting it?
Seeing it and being aware of it, yeah. I think so. I mean, being aware of anything, you guys know that. Being aware of anything makes it kind of brings it into view. So it's not hidden, or then
what do you mean?
That has the effect, bringing all these facets of ourselves into how we feel, feeling, sensations.
But what does it mean? Bringing it into, How do you physically do that?
Being aware of it. Being aware of it. You could ask anybody on Earth, "Are you aware?" Who would say no? It's impossible.
I would.
Yeah.
Would you say it, Michael, but would you say it just because you believe it, or because you're just trying to be difficult?
I'm just
check it out in your own experience.
Yeah.
Check it out in your own experience. Are you aware?
Yeah, I am.
Not I am. Are you aware?
Yes.
It just depends what substance you're popping.
Always. Even when I'm dreaming, I'm aware of the dream.
Yeah,
awareness isn't black and white.
Why have an alarm clock? If you set your alarm clock, we're fast asleep and we hear it ring. That means even though we're in deep sleep, we're still aware. So, having an understanding that awareness is a part of our true nature, that's really valuable. Because we cannot not be aware.
Not aware fully is dead, basically.
We cannot be aware as a defense or a resistance, as a way of
not fully aware is dead. I actually heard that being dead is even more aware. You step into a higher dimension of awareness, more vast.
I'll tell you when I'm dead.
Yeah.
What do you think, Elias? What do you think happens after death, Elias?
What do I think happens after death? My thoughts on that are, I think it's just a giant mystery. I really don't know, and I'm really okay with it's a giant mystery that I look forward to getting into when the day comes, the time comes.
I see. I only asked because so many people claim that they know, so I thought maybe you had one of those generally accepted beliefs in regards to what happens after death. But fair enough.
Yeah,
mystery is good.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know, and I'm okay that I don't know.
Yeah. What about, how do you feel about the idea of trying to fix ourselves? Am I trying? Yeah, I'm trying to fix myself all the time. So is that a good thing?
Does it work?
Good. Not as much as I'd like it to, but it's definitely working. I go to a therapist. I've been going for 2.5 years. I actually have another extra therapist now that I go to, and I am making progress. I have, homework, so to speak, and I actually practice it, and I do see progress. I actually see things in my real life changing for the better as a result of my inner work. So yeah, it is working.
Well, if you think about it, the need to fix something must be somewhere along the line something wrong. So the idea that there's something wrong that needs to be fixed. What does that do? There's something wrong with me. So I need to go and get it fixed. How does that feel? To be going with the feeling there's something wrong with me.
Frustrating,
painful, confusing. You have all these endeavors of trying to fix stuff. Psychotherapy, therapists make a fortune on this idea. So, but what happens if we're okay as we are? How would we connect up with that. I'm okay as I am. I cry and I'm painful and I get frustrated and I fuck things up, but that's okay.
If I'm okay, there's nowhere to go. I'm in a state of wholeness. There's no question. So in fact, what I need to fix is the idea of something to fix.
Yeah. But we come out of childhood with the feeling that there must be something wrong somewhere.
Fucking A.
There must be something wrong somewhere because all these things are going on, and I got to do this, and this is important, and if I don't do this, something good's not going to happen. So we come out of it with the feeling there's something wrong with me. I think we all do.
Yeah.
Then we try and get people connect up with spiritual stuff or therapy. They think, okay, I can go and do this, and then I can fix it, and I can be okay again. But that's problematic because if we connect up with our spontaneous true self, true nature, that's inherently peaceful and happy and joyful and sensitive and allowing, if we connect up with that, we go more and more through our pain to connect up with that. That's not a process of trying to fix. Then it's like inevitable that I end up connecting up with aspects of myself that are inherently peaceful and loving and joyful and stuff like that. So it's a kind of a different approach, not fixing. If we drop the idea that I have to fix myself, what do we do then?
I guess maybe sometimes the way we use words is obviously significant. I hear some people use phrases like facing the darkness or facing the shadow, and sort of welcoming all the parts that we forbade ourselves to be back into consciousness, into awareness.
Yeah, but doing that is implying that there aren't sides of me that I have to separate from or avoid or defend against. I'm willing to embrace all aspects of me that arise in my daily life.
Yeah,
that's very challenging, but also incredibly rewarding.
Can you give me an example? Like what of a part of yourself that you used to hold back or didn't show and now you do?
Well, in my own process in the last 6 months or so, I'm really come in contact with the sorrow of separation. So I'm embracing when that arises. I'm trying to embrace it, like I sit or I lay down and just feel it. Just feel the pain, the sorrow. So, and probably if we're working on childhood stuff, somewhere along, we're gonna meet these guardians, so to speak, and need to go through them, these obstacles. So, I think it's the same process. You just have to, when it arises, we feel it. Put a name on it, it can be valuable, but feel this, go into the sensation. Practice embracing it, moving towards it. Staying with the feeling.
You said shadow, Simkin, something shadow. I heard the expression shadow work. Like we need to do shadow work. What first of all, what is the shadow? I don't really think I understand what the shadow is.
Are you asking that to Elias?
No, I'm asking you actually, Simkin.
I mean, the way I see it is that in order to get love as a child, I had to pretend to be certain things and deny my true self. And in order not to be abandoned, I repressed the things that some of the things that I really was, and they entered what is called the shadow, which other people call it subconscious. So it's things that are there, but we choose not to see them. And kind of the healing process involves acknowledging what's there and making friends with it. I mean, in my case, I think there are various parts of me I repress. One of them is the predator. I think when I was growing up, I got the sense, oh, don't be a predator. And but part of me is a predator. I've got these teeth that are meant for ripping flesh, and my eyes come out the front of my head and not the side. So I used to hold my punches back and pretend to be more gentle than I am. And me being honest and open is being willing to metaphorically kick and punch sometimes, and be clear about my boundaries, and if there's something I want, be willing to take it with permission, obviously.
I see. Elias, what is shadow work?
Well, I would say the shadow is just basically something that's not in the light. So it's something that's been pushed out of the light, out of awareness, out of consciousness, being pushed out or hidden from. So it becomes all the names of that, the shadow or the dark side or whatever, Darth Vader. Darth Vader. You know that guy he made from the movies. Darth Vader is a synonym for Dark Father.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Why? That was a
digression. It's a digression because it's stuff that's pushed out of awareness, pushed out of the light into the shadows.
Well, it's like
so
shadow work is bringing it back into light.
How can you bring something out which you're unaware of?
Well, you can't not be aware, so it's just a question of how to trigger it, how to get it.
Maybe it's reverse engineering, like judging by my reaction, you can say, well, this reaction means that there's something hidden that's making you react like that. And then we can presume that what's in the shadow is XYZ, and then we could try and, work with it.
Yeah, I think, any situation, there's some kind of thoughts or emotions going on. So it just depends where we put our attention on. If we're occupied with sawing a piece of wood, and we stopped a second and checked out how we felt, we might get in contact with something. I mean, I don't really, at work, I don't really want to do this. I'm fed up with doing this job, or I hate my boss. But you can't really look into stuff like that because that's going to have. You don't know the effect of that. So so the opportunities are just all the time, every day.
Yeah.
To get in contact with our pain and our shadow side, or our split off aspects of ourselves. That's why a practice is really important. We have to have a continuous practice, and then the more we do that, we get more sensitive to the stuff that we're trying to push away and avoid and suppress. Is that we're willing to open up to it a bit more. So that's also a very, very important part of the process, is the practice of that, the willingness and the interest and the curiosity to inquire in who the hell am I? What is it? Am I just a guy with a turquoise shirt on, going around talking? Or in what's going on in situations that I'm in my daily life? It's the feeling to become more aware, basically. You're never out of it.
I mean, the practice sort of shakes us up and stops us being stuck in our ways. If we don't have practices of certain sorts, there's no. We don't get an opportunity to see ourselves from different perspectives.
What do you mean practices? Sorry.
Well, for each of us has our own practices, whether it's meditation or you talked about going to see therapists and doing the homework that they give you.
I see.
Kind of training of a certain sort, or yoga, or whatever you want to.
I tell you, one really good practice to create a group inquiry, which means we become a member of a group of people, and we're mirroring and reflecting each other like that. That's a very good arena to get into the practice of looking at ourselves, moving our attention and awareness back to ourselves. A group is great for that. You can do it with a therapist, but there's the dynamics of that and stuff, one-on-one. Okay, but I think I've come to. I've done thousands and thousands of individual therapy sessions, but I've always had the feeling that group work is much more effective, much more support. You get much more support. You can go into much more different aspects of these parts of us.
I'm all for it. I think it's an excellent idea. I mean, can this conversation be the beginning of one?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, My suggestion is, if you're happy to do this, is that we put an email address underneath the video, and anyone who wants to join a group can join. Talk a little bit about how you'd see it, how you might see it working.
Yeah, very interesting.
Well, we need three aspects. We need awareness, which we have, because we're talking about it. We need a place, a venue, and we need people.
Can't it be Zoom?
The venue.
It has, yeah. You can do it on Zoom. I'm in a man sharing group. I started in 1992, something like that.
Wow.
And we were doing it. We was having it at each other's place when I was living in Norway. But so I participate on Zoom because I'm now living in Israel. And when the guys there they meet at somebody's house. But the advantage of having it in a location, in a venue, is you can use each other. I mean, I work a lot with family constellations.
What's that?
Family constellations. It's a method derived by Bert Hellinger, where you use people in the group as representatives in the family to solve family issues or even generational issues. And by having a group of people, you can you can use each other to represent. Somebody can represent a mother or a father or a sister, if that's where the issue lies. Mm-hmm. So that's the advantage of. I've tried to do. I've actually participated in family constellations over Zoom, and it really didn't work for me.
Uh-huh.
So not only with family stuff, but Michael mentioned that with what was that? IFT? No, what was it?
IFS. Internal family systems. Yeah.
Where we can use each other as representatives to represent parts of us or dynamics with people that we're having issues with. It's such a complete way of working.
Yeah, I mean, that's
my dream is to have like a where a group of us who are creating this travel around and hold these groups. Like a rock band tour, and we have these groups where we go to a place and we have a group in another place and we return and this is ongoing. That would set going a movement where people can really feel they can come to and work on inquiry into themselves and using representatives in the group in a. And the energy you get and the trust and the camaraderie and all that stuff, it has incredible offshoots.
How do you use someone as let's say we are now in a group. So let's say I'm using Simkin as a representative of a member of family of mine. How is it done? You will say, he's your father now. So what? Address your father and say, I love you to him. And then you're going to say to Simkin, reply to Michael Bloom that you love him back, or what? How does it physically work?
It physically works, but say the person represents, comes up with an issue they have, and it throughout the inquiry, it seems like, let's say it was something with, they grew up without their father. That's pretty common, right?
Yeah.
So then the person would choose a person to represent their father.
So I choose Simkin.
You choose Simkin to be your father, right?
Yep.
So you would set that up on the floor, right? And maybe even choose a representative for you. It depends. Mm-hmm. What the energy is.
Yeah, but let's keep it simple as an example. Yeah.
Okay, so we put up a representative for Michael Bloom and a representative for his father, Michael Simkin.
How? What do you mean we put up?
Just a piece of paper? They just stand on the floor.
Ah, okay.
They move from their chair to a standing position on the floor.
Okay.
And then you allow any movement that arises in the people who are standing on the floor, what usually happens, because it creates a field. They start tuning into a field. Don't ask me how it happens, because there is no real explanation.
It's magical.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting on the couch, viewing myself, my representative standing up, talking to Michael Simkin. And how do they know what to say to each other if that's what they're doing?
It goes a bit less on talking and more on an inner movement. So say you, as you represent the representative of you, looked at his father and turned away. That illustrates something. So you would ask the representative, Michael Bloom, what's going on? And you say, no, I just felt I couldn't look at my father.
Wow. That means I have an influence over them energetically, which makes them react like that? Is that it?
No, the representative is picking something up in the field.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Picking something up from your history.
Wow.
Energetically. Now, and then Michael Simkin, as the father, could say bow his head or turn away also and look at the ground. So you could suppose from that something happened in the father's life, right? See what it actually does. It brings things that are hidden to life, to view. You can never find out otherwise.
Yeah.
I grew up without my biological father. He was never in my life. He split up with my mum before I was born, where I was conceived. So I did a family constellation on that, and he never knew his father. His father was a chauffeur to some of the aristocracy in England, and he made the daughter of the Lord of Norfolk or something pregnant, so they kicked him out. So he was born. He never knew his. So I set up in the constellation, my father, his father. Okay? And then it's like when you start playing with this, you can get some healing can start where my father, who never met his father, so he's carrying within him some deficiency or some hole. So he meets his father and he has an interaction with his father, which activates something in him. Maybe it activates love or openness or disgust. It can open many things. Or the father who had never met his son can suddenly feel pride or joy or can be touched. So you can't really access these things. It's a tremendous way to access very, very deep experiences in an immediate way.
So how does it work? I don't understand. So what happens after? So let's say we've done this thing with Michael Simkin, the representations and everything, and then we finish the session, and then I go home. How does it affect me?
You will find out.
No, but I mean, I'm trying to understand if you could explain the mechanics behind it, like the fact that your representative turned away and Simkin looked down, that generated an extra field that influenced your field and kind of dissolved it. I don't know.
Well, let's say, so my biological father never met his father. So he has a meeting with his father. Although it's a representative, energetically, it kind of brings in, it is magical. It brings in that energy. So my biological father met his father, had an exchange with his father. That's going to affect him, right? Yeah. That's going to affect him, and that's going to affect him in his relationship to me. So maybe in that situation, the facilitator would bring on a representative for say it was my constellation. So there was my father, his father, and they bring in a representative to me. And I never met my father's father. So suddenly my father's saying, hey, this is your grandfather. That's going to have an energetic effect on me. When something that was absent is brought in to the field.
It's like changing the past.
Yeah, basically, yeah. You can change the past. It's a brilliant method.
Yes,
I think the reality of the method is very different than talking about it. It's a bit like talking about psychedelics.
It's phenomenological, so that means you just pick up what in the moment what's going on. It's a rare method in working on those things, with family stuff. And
I understand why to do family constellation work you would need to be together, but through Zoom there can be sharing groups where it's not as intense as family constellations, but it's people being vulnerable and sharing what hurts them.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, why not do it on Zoom for sure? If it works, or it gets people together, that's the main thing. Yeah.
I'm all for Zoom just because you can do it from home. You don't need to go out. It takes much less. There's no travel time. It's just easy going and safe as well.
Yeah,
so a group like that would be like a certain amount, like 6, 7, 8 people, maybe less, who meet regularly, once every 2 weeks, once a month, and share what's going on. And the whole intention is to inquire into oneself. It's not so much storytelling. Like I bought a dog the other day, and when I bought some cornflakes and stuff, it's more you start an inquiry process into yourself. So you're bringing stuff up. That's the whole point, is to bring into view, into awareness, into consciousness what's hidden. It's the whole process.
And we are each
meditations and therapies.
Oh, they say so I mean, they say in meditation, be the witness, and why maybe one of the reasons why group work is so important is that we're able to be each other's witnesses.
Mm.
I think becoming the witness is the first step, because becoming a witness, it implies a certain distance, and if that's why feeling the pain and inquiring the inside is actually not taking distance, is getting close as you can to our experience. So the witness is a kind of a first step. It's a necessary first step to be able to look at ourselves and see what's going on. But the next step is you've got to really go into it, feel it, sense it.
Cool.
As close to it as possible.
Before we end, I would like to ask you about your work with teenagers and what insights can you share with us?
Well, I work with teenagers for 8. When I was studying, I worked at the biggest youth psychiatric center in Norway for 8 years. And then after I finished my psychology studies, I was a treatment director. And the joy of working with teenagers is that they're not so set in their minds yet as us adults. So they're more open, they're more interested, and they're the future. And I used to call these processes, I had youth in truth. And it's like we're probably not going to survive much unless the teenagers become more aware, more informed, more in contact with themselves. So I think work with the pulling teenagers into all this stuff we're talking about, so they can get to. Because I was never in my growing up given these talked about this stuff, or I unfortunately got into it myself when I was 15, but normally teenagers don't. So I think it's really valuable to the teenagers get this guidance and these teachings, these wisdom teachings, this guidance into being themselves before they're far too much conditioned when they get into adulthood. So I think youth processes, they can get guidance and learn this about contacting with themselves and being more real and more authentic and more open. It's just it's paramount. as a species. I don't know if I can say paramount as a species, but
Sure.
we're pretty screwed up and we're struggling. And I think probably the way to kind of mitigate that a bit and give the possibility to change it is when teenagers start to get into all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So to create teenage groups also.
Definitely.
So,
Simkin, you want to wrap it up, this wonderful interview?
I mean, it's been an interesting chat, and we covered an awful lot of ground rather quickly. And there's
how long have we been talking?
Yeah. More than an hour. Yeah, I mean, I think you're super interesting, Elias. I like your approach. Have you got anything?
This is a great idea you guys have got together. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's not. We're not exactly the first people to be doing it. I mean,
of course, we're getting better at it.
I hope.
Yeah, right.
Have you got anything you'd like to add, Elias?
Yes.
A message.
To who?
To the world.
Whoever you like.
The world. A message to the world. Message to the world. Let's kind of really start getting together, working on ourselves, and stop fucking things up so much.
Absolutely.
Sounds like a good plan. Have you got a website now? What's your web address?
I have a website, yeah.
What is it?
It's called livingintrust.com, which was Mr. Simpkin said it sounded like a lawyer. What did you say, Michael?
Yes,
it sounds like an account.
We can put the link to it. We will put a link to it under the interview.
Yeah. It's called livingintrust.com, basically.
Yes.
Cool. And it's got it's loads of stuff on it.
Yes. So it was a pleasure speaking to you, Elias McQuade. Michael Simkin, I absolutely love you. I think you're amazing, and I love doing these shows with you. And wow. So good luck to everyone, and thank you for watching.
When are we going to meet up again? That's
soon. Elias, thank you very much for this interview. Michael Simkin, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching, dear viewers, and bye-bye for now.
Enjoy the joy.